Grasshopper king in the terrible chap.
Yeah, he's coming in later to do some recording. Oh, hi everyone. If you caught our lovely new theme tune, this is the Manchester Indie Theatre podcast, and we have a fantastic new guest on this week. This is episode 3 of the Manchester Indie Theatre podcast, or MITPod. Again, you are here with me, Caroline.
And Amelia.
And we have another fantastic guest this week. This is Barbara Diesel, who is so excited to meet. Thank you so much for coming on. I think to kick off, before we delve into everything that Barbara's got going on, everything that she's sort of been up to, we need to chat through what's on at the moment.
Yes. So we wanted to give another shout out to Bears.
Yes, because that is coming up in just a few days. On the 6th it starts.
So thank you, Natalie, for sending in your lovely little voice note last week.
Yeah.
Bears will be on at Contact Theatre on the 6th of May.
And it goes on to the 16th. It's a long run, that.
I've got that one in the diary myself, actually.
It looks exciting.
Yeah,
it looks
really
good.
To that one.
There is a show that I would really like to see that will be on at the Edge Theatre from the 13th to the 30th of May. And this is Mothers and Daughters. It's a Pie production show. So it's a brand new dark comedy by Paris Rogers, directed by Kim Burnett. I love The Edge. I think, what's the last
I've never been to The Edge.
I've never been. We should go to see this.
This is the time.
It's actually really great. Like, I love the theatre space, and Chiltern's lovely as well, so yeah. And our next shout out is our special guest can tell us more on this, but we have Redline Theatre's Lived Experiences.
Ooh, what's that? That sounds interesting.
I don't know. What is that?
Oh my God. More. And this comes out at the 15th of May at Salford Arts Theatre. And as we're joined by the curator, our guest will be telling us more. But we also wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to OffCut.
Yeah, the final 20 are out. They've been out for a little while by now.
And who's on the final 20,
Caroline? Lot of really, really very talented people. A lot of fantastic names. I happen to have a little play in there as well. So that's going to be on from mid-June to early July time. Keep an eye on the OffCut Instagram account for dates, times, etc., etc. It'll be really fun. And I can't wait to see everyone else's shows. It'll be really cool.
It'd be great. OffCut, for any listeners who might not have gone to see OffCut or been involved before, is a short play festival that goes on for a couple of weeks. This time, as Caroline said, from mid-June to early July, and there's a series of fantastic short plays that are going to be part of this. So it will be on at 53.2, and I encourage anyone to go and watch.
It's a great opportunity to see actors you might not have seen before as well. Get abreast of who all the writers are on the scene, or some of the writers, because 90 plays were sent in this year, and there's just such a fantastic array of people writing out there, and directors as well. All the talent is on display, so I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be really cool. But I think it's time to crack on, isn't it? And I think we should introduce properly Barbara Diesel, our lovely guest.
So who is Barbara Diesel?
Who is Barbara Diesel? Well, I'm Barbara Diesel.
Well, that's the answer then. Let's finish the podcast.
What a name, though, Barbara Diesel.
It's so strong.
Such a great
name.
You
know what? Guess what my granddad was called?
What was he called?
Vin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, you told me this.
I know. I feel like that was in my brain somewhere.
Perfect.
And then the actor Vin Diesel wasn't actually born Vin Diesel, so stole his name.
Name stealer.
He is the OG.
He was the OG.
Diesel.
Yeah,
calling out Vin Diesel right now for being a name stealer.
Yeah. Not my granddad Vin Diesel.
Oh, no,
as in the actor
not.
Vin Diesel for stealing my granddad Vin Diesel.
Exactly. The second Vin Diesel was the name stealer, unless he has some kind of time machine.
Barbara Diesel is an award-winning creative based in central Manchester. She is the artistic director and resident writer of Redline Theatre. Her debut one-woman play, Dear Eliza, was awarded Best Play at the Greater Manchester Fringe Festival, and currently she is writing for and producing Lived Experiences, a short play event taking place during Mental Health Awareness Week in May. Alongside her work with Redline Theatre, Barbara is a professional actor, theatre maker and facilitator. She has occasionally co-hosted programmes on Salford City Radio with Ian Rothwell and is currently studying to become a British Sign Language interpreter.
That's fantastic. I mean, that last point, I think that access in theatre is so vital, and it's great to have someone on who's
absolutely
throwing yourself into that world. That's so cool.
So how about we start off by, because I think this is how I met you, Barbara, is through your one-woman play that you did for the GM Fringe, which was directed by the wonderful Helen Parry.
Woo! She keeps getting name drops, that girl.
Yes,
she's everywhere.
Helen. Every pod we're just like, Helen Parry.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's incredible. Because I remember speaking to you about it, because I know when you won Best Play in 2024, GM Fringe, I believe, you had developed this piece and extended it, I think, from, it was 30 minutes originally.
Yeah.
So would you like to share a bit more about Dear Eliza?
I first wrote Dear Eliza in 2023 for the GM Fringe in 2023, actually. And I just wanted to be on stage. I was writing something purely because I wanted to act, and I'd not really written any of my own work before. I'd certainly not performed my own work before, so it was a really big thing for me, and I just wanted to prove to myself I could do it. So I came up with Dear Eliza, which is a one-woman play all about mental health and grief and suicide, and it's kind of an exploration of a friendship that's under the strain of mental ill health. And to be honest, I didn't want to write about mental health originally, but I was just drawn to this idea, and so I created this 30-minute play, and really I was so last minute doing it. I was absolutely terrified sharing my work, so it was a free entry thing originally, half an hour, smallest audience. I had 3 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had 2 of my managers and then my mum, who was also
amazing.
my box office, so
Oh, wow. Shout out to her.
yeah, shout out to my mum. So I was going to just kind of leave it, to be honest. I felt really happy that I'd kind of proven to myself that I could write my own work and perform my own work. And then I met Helen Parry at the Fringe kind of after party, and also I was nominated for Best Newcomer in the 2023 Fringe, which I was shocked at. So I already had the cogs turning in my head like, oh, well, I've been nominated for an award and I wasn't expecting that. I didn't even realise someone had come to watch it, to be honest. So maybe I should revisit it, but I'm not sure. And Helen asked me to send her the script. And yeah, one thing led to another. And, I got prodded into writing a full 60-minute script. And it was an absolute joy to work with Helen and develop the piece. So from there, we toured it. And then I took it to a little Fringe circuit in summer 2024. So Brighton Fringe, Buxton Fringe, and Manchester Fringe, ending with getting Best Play.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the story. Thank you. It's kind of the origin story, I suppose, of Redline Theatre, because Redline Theatre was birthed through that.
Well, I went to see Dear Eliza, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And it's quite interesting that the way you talk about it, you didn't really want to talk about mental health, and then you were prodded into redoing it. There's this sense of kind of reluctance, like through the play as well, as this sense of I don't want this to be happening. As from the character's perspective, there's this real, and that's it's got a strange charm to it. It's the honesty. It's the kind of the outspokenness.
It's very human,
It's
and it's very
human.
real and relatable. And I remember when I went to see it myself, I think that really resonates, that when you're tapping into something that is so universally experienced, in that feeling, whether it's like maybe, a lived experience that necessarily someone hasn't had, but they can relate to that feeling of that feeling of frustration, that feeling of not being able to work through kind of an emotion that's very difficult.
But it also doesn't have that sort of scared light touch that a lot of work about serious issues can have. And because of that, it feels very honest. It feels like, no, I'm living this, and therefore I'm allowed to say this.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciated that, I thought. And I think that's what a lot of reviews have said as well. It was just like, punches are not pulled. It's really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And that is something that I really pride myself on. I'm quite open about, having a history of mental health issues myself. And Dear Eliza isn't autobiographical, but there's definitely a lot of the writer's voice in the play. I mean, a lot of what is discussed in the play about access to mental health treatment and attitudes around mental health, those all come, from a really honest place. And a lot of people who I spoke to after the play found it very cathartic, and that was really what pushed me to keep going with it, was hearing from other people who were saying, oh, you've described something in this play that I haven't been able to articulate myself. And I think that's a really special feeling, especially with something like mental health and depression, for example, it can be so isolating. So to feel like you've expressed something and put it into a creative format that then other people resonate with and, you know, say, oh, this is something that I've not really experienced before, seeing something that represents it in this way. That was probably one of my proudest achievements, is just having that feedback from people and feeling like I could give that to people when it can be such an isolating experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why it needs to be a play, for example, rather than a film, I think, because you're in a space with real people, making eye contact with real people, and that catharsis, I think, will come.
It really
through
translates, I think, when you're in the intimate sort of space of theatre, definitely.
Yeah, I'm a very strong advocate of the remoteness of our lives now is very beneficial and helpful for some people in some ways, but in other ways, bringing people together in a space, which is what theatre does, especially when talking about contentious, serious, scary issues, I think it's the only way to do it in a way that's directly impactful and human. But I think as well, like we've mentioned Red Line Theatre, obviously your theatre company. Did it launch end of last year, was it? Or
We're coming up to a year old.
Oh my gosh, exciting! Well, one of the great things about it, because one of the taglines I think I've seen, or the tagline of it, is about exploring the ugliness of being human. And I love that. I love the raw honesty of that.
Honestly, when I was thinking about how do I define what the kind of work that I want to create is, exploring human ugliness is very much what I want to do. It also feels so wanky though. But I was kind of going around in circles about how do I describe what it is, the kind of thing that I want to write about, and those nuances and those grey areas. And in the end, I think being a creative artist, you do have to sometimes just settle and accept.
Yeah.
I am a creative artist. I'm allowed to be a little bit wanky
on
occasion.
If it's the only word you can think of and it feels like the most appropriate word, use the word. You
Well,
know?
the tagline on the Red Line Theatre's page really sheds light on the kind of work that you want to spotlight. You know, you mentioned you want to create work that feels relevant, exposing, and real. Which, as Caroline, you just said, you know, that is theatre that can do that and can bring people together to really kind of sit with the discomfort sometimes of issues that are usually, you know, felt by us all, but yet very hard to address head on. It is a great space to do so. And I know that you're a big champion of new writing as well. And as I said, spotlighting these issues that, you know, maybe as a society we do want to shy away from.
Yeah, there's definitely topics that I want to write about that I haven't necessarily produced yet, but there's a lot of things that I think societally we are shying away from, and a lot of things that it's convenient to not acknowledge the presence of certain things because it doesn't fit into the paradigm that we have. And I think that that's a big problem in theatre, which tends to be quite, I mean, without getting political, it tends to be quite left-wing, and we tend to be wanting to do social change. And the problem with that is when you find those little niggles that kind of, you know, the typical straw man argument of, oh, but what about these people? And no one likes it when someone does a straw man's argument, but that's a classic thing. And we don't like to address that a lot of those straw man's arguments are actually, you know, real. The big one at the moment, all of the horrible kind of controversy and ridiculous, quite rampant transphobia that is going on at the moment. And the classic strawman thing that people pull out is talking about detransitioners and things like that. And I think that it's really interesting how people discuss things like that. And I'm not transgender, so I'm not going to kind of comment on that too much. But, you know, detransitioners do exist. And I think that in arguments like that, we need to acknowledge the existence of certain things that maybe it would be easy to get used against your argument, rather than say, well, actually, that's great that person had that experience, that they were able to explore their gender identity and then come back comfortably to a gender identity they actually felt comfortable with.
Yeah, it's all about the exploration and the discovery at the
Absolutely.
end. Yeah.
But it's used so often as a strawman's argument, and that's really just me, like, throwing out an example. Again, I'm not transgender, so I'm not going to comment too much on that, but I think there's so many examples of things like that we see popping up in discourse where people are really, well, we don't really want to acknowledge that happens. And
yeah, the sort of the bit that doesn't quite fit kind of gets a little bit rubbed out when it comes to discussing.
And I don't think it helps anyone.
No.
I don't think it helps anyone. I think that it's not helpful, for example, to act like men aren't victims of abuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not helpful to act like things like that don't happen. but it can be difficult to know how to approach discussing things like that, especially in a creative space. But I think a creative space is exactly where we can discuss it, where we can see other perspectives, and it doesn't mean that the existence of those things undermines or undervalues some very important perspectives.
Absolutely. I think we need to rebuild our empathy, which I think theatre is great for, because again, it's person to person. It's a great space to do that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I think when you go and see a show and it makes you really feel something and think about something that perhaps you've gone about your day and you weren't expecting to kind of be hit with such a kind of raw emotion. And I think this is what's brilliant about theatre. It does kind of force you for that 60 minutes or 2 hours or however long you're in that space to feel those feelings and go on that journey. And you're able to tell real stories that need to be shared and send real messages that need to be heard through a creative forum, which as artists, and actors, writers, that we all want to do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And also talking about, we mentioned a bit ago that you are a champion of new writing, and talking about the realities of life and living with, difficult or hard to explain or hard to explore subject matter. You've got lived experiences coming up, which we mentioned at the start, which again is a combination of various pieces of new writing, which is really exciting. That's sort of middle of this month, 15th, isn't it?
And you mentioned that you did this last year as well.
Yeah. So lived experiences we did last year, and it was 7 different short plays, all exploring the broad theme of mental health. So there were some really specific plays that were, focused on particular mental health disorders. There were some that were a little bit broader and more interpretable. There was some absurdism, some surrealism, some naturalism, some comedy. And the idea is to just bring together a lot of different perspectives and experiences around mental health and what mental health can look like, because our brains are quite brilliant things and they can do so many amazingly wacky things, and a lot of the amazingly wacky things that they do are, coping mechanisms. So I'm really excited to be bringing lived experiences back this year. That's on the 15th of May at Salford Arts Theatre. We've got some incredibly talented people involved, and for me it's really important with lived experiences that I think a lot of conversations around mental health can feel really heavy, and people can be really tentative around going to see theatre about mental health. And although it is important to have theatre that is serious and sits with you, like Dear Eliza, for example, it's also important that we start stripping back the idea that every conversation around mental health needs to be something that's really gets you on your edge of your seat and you need to be worried about saying something wrong. So there's some fantastic pieces this year. There's some great dark comedy as well that I'm really excited to get audiences in for.
Have you got like an MC as well who was a finalist at the Frog and Bucket?
Yes, so Will Rice, he is a comedian friend of mine, and he compared it last year and he was absolutely brilliant. We had feedback forms afterwards and, everyone's saying, oh, this piece was great, and then they all end with, on the other comments, oh, the comedian guy was awesome, things like that. So really glad that he's coming back. And the thing that's great with Will is that he's a really great mediator of the energy, because there are some serious pieces that need to have that weight in the room, and people need to, if you have whiplash and you have a comedian suddenly cracking random jokes after just watching quite a serious piece of theatre, that's not ideal. So he's really good at mediating energy, bringing it up when it needs to be brought up, letting it sit a little bit when it needs to, really sensitive, but he's also just a cracking guy, and it really shows every time I see him do a set. He's just fantastic.
That's great, and I think you need someone who's got that level of that balance of sensitivity, and really, really good. That's really cool. So lived experiences looks like it's going to be hopefully something that rolls and keeps coming back, and it's a great format because it means you can have new pieces, new people, new perspectives each time. Do you have any plans for Dear Eliza in the near future?
Oh, you're asking the right questions, Caroline, because you know the answer to that, don't you?
I don't know how I possibly could.
Yes, Dear Eliza, we are currently, and I say we, I'm referring to myself and my co-producer, Alicia Eason. We have been doing the classic uphill battle of getting things on its feet for Dear Eliza. When I was touring Dear Eliza in 2024, we had a psychotherapist come and watch the performance. And I had a conversation with him afterwards, and he said that he works with a lot of people who are training to become grief counsellors. And he said, have you considered sharing this performance with people who are training to become mental health professionals. And I thought, not really. And again, it comes from that thing of Dear Eliza, I wrote it from a very honest place. And a lot of what it is discussing is sometimes, you know, if I was commissioned to write a piece about mental health, I probably wouldn't have written it the way I wrote Dear Eliza. So there is a lot of sarcasm. There's a huge amount of honesty in a really dark kind of comedic way.
Yes.
So that really surprised me. So we started getting, you know, as we were touring, inviting along other mental health professionals and getting their opinions on it. And they were all saying, yeah, this would be really brilliant. If I'd seen something like this when I was training, it would have been really beneficial. And ultimately what it came down to is the burnout rates in mental health professionals are incredibly high. The training that, you know, counsellors and new therapists are getting aren't really equipping them for the actual levels of patient distress that they might be encountering. So something like Dear Eliza, which does have some intensity in it and really shows very, very raw emotion, could be really beneficial for people who are wanting to go into work with mental health but haven't actually had that experience. Because at the moment, what is happening is you get people training and then they go and do a work placement, and that's their first time. Their first time encountering people with high levels of distress is going to be in real life, and I don't think that's safe for the people that they're dealing with or for themselves, and I think it's no wonder that burnout rates are high.
Absolutely.
So what we want to do with Dear Eliza is get it into higher education institutes, so universities and colleges, and we want to perform it to students who are going to work into mental health, and kind of give them that experience. And then we've got a couple of workshops that we'll be running alongside it, and one of them is a kind of simulated counselling workshop that we are currently developing, which will give students the chance to interact with me in character. And it's not about getting answers out of the character, because you've already seen the play, you already know what the answers are. It's about how do you approach someone who's in high level distress, and how do you get them to open up and trust you. So that is what we're doing with Dear Eliza at the moment. That's the whole kind of verbal bleh.
I think it's really interesting as well, because you talk about people with high levels of distress, but the character in Dear Eliza is in a high level of distress, but is also quite evasive of... Yeah, she talks about it a lot, but there's no kind of crying and screaming and throwing herself on the floor. It's all very kind of... You can imagine her clamming up in front of a therapist.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in Dear Eliza, there's kind of a couple of perspectives that I explore in terms of what it feels like to be experiencing mental health issues and quite high levels of distress. But I think that there's also something to be said for what we are able to take ownership of. And for me personally, having had quite extreme lived experiences with mental health issues, I'm definitely very open with certain things. You know, in conversation, I can be quite upfront about certain things. Things that I discuss in Dear Eliza, essentially, are a lot of it comes from a really open and personal place that I'm quite happy to talk about. But that doesn't mean that things that are happening currently in my life right now I can always be upfront about. And there's that almost kind of duality that's going on, that I'm very open with, yes, I have mental health issues, I've experienced this, I've experienced that, but then actually opening up about what's going on right now in this moment can sometimes be a bit challenging. So there's those kind of dual forces going on.
Yeah, and it can be so valuable then to mental health professionals if you're in a workshop scenario with them, and you can then determine what you hold back, what you give to them, and what they would need to give to you in order to get the right response.
Yeah.
And that goes back again to us discussing in-person interactions in the theatre. It's that same thing but removed into an educational space. And this just shows just what creativity can do in other areas. And that feels like that's the way forward, is to kind of use the arts as therapy or as a tool to teach people about how certain areas of the world work. So you also have performance workshops.
Yeah, so we are doing workshops for performing arts students, and the workshops, I've ran them a couple of times before and they've been really, really successful, working with young people who want to go into theatre or acting or writing or directing, and it's looking at how we can write and create emotionally complex characters, and then how we can play emotionally complex characters, and how writing can be catharsis. It touches on that a little bit, but then also the really important thing that is looked at kind of as a through line throughout the workshop is how you can look after your own mental health as a practitioner going into theatre, because I think that's so important.
That is so important. That's so interesting because I do a similar workshop where it's about writing issue-based theatre. I have a little section on staying protected and protective. So it's so interesting that we've got similar workshops going on.
Zoom, 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 zoom. That's the sound of our brainwaves.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's so cool. That's so valuable because there's so many younger people who are keen to get into the arts industry, and there's a lot of things that have been out, like things like adolescence, like Baby Reindeer, like things like that that are kind of scary and vaguely or closely based on real things.
And I think a lot of young people, and I say this because I was probably guilty of it myself as a young actor, I'm talking teenage years, you have yet to learn that there is a difference between good acting and acting that has shock value.
Yes.
And I think a lot of young actors are maybe drawn to, say they are auditioning for drama school and they're drawn to choosing a monologue that is really shocking and horrific.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, it's really intense, and everyone said that my parents said they felt uncomfortable watching it, so it must be having an effect. Well, the writing's probably doing the bulk of that work. Yeah. And I think that it can be really dangerous as well to rely on that shock value, but also as a performer, I mean, it takes a big toll on you. Absolutely. If you're not putting the correct protections in place for yourself, then it can be really dangerous. So that's what we want to do with that workshop.
Emotional safety
Definitely
is very important, and I think, there is a level where you have to look after your well-being as well, especially if you are dealing with subject matter that is very, very difficult and you are kind of having to draw from quite a dark place. It's very important to take care of yourself, and as well, like you mentioned, kind of people choosing pieces that have that shock value, but it's also choosing like a piece that you really feel connected to. Ultimately, it's a piece that you feel best will represent you.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going in with the intention that I want to create this effect, maybe you're less likely to create that effect.
Yes. And I think also, certainly in the case of drama school auditions, I think when I was auditioning years and years ago, I think that you feel like you want to do the most amazing piece of theatre ever, and you want to show the most extreme that your performance can do, and that can be a good thing. I'm not an audition panellist, so I'm not going to say, but I also think that actually what a lot of audition panellists are looking for is whether or not they believe you when you're speaking the words, and if you're doing something that's quite shocking, you kind of run a higher risk of not doing that justice and not being believable. So it is like a sort of balancing act between those things.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you've put yourself through an emotionally traumatizing experience and you've got nothing out of it.
Yeah.
So, and that can hurt even more, where it's like, was my raw emotion not believable? And that can be even more damaging.
I actually did want to go to drama school originally to do a master's, and then made a decision in the end not to go. I deferred my place and then I decided not to. But I remember when I was going through that process, which I'm really glad I still did it, by the way, because I actually did create a monologue for picking that I actually obviously went on to develop. And yeah, I think at the beginning I always sort of thought whenever I do a monologue, I have to find like a really intense, serious piece, to do. And yeah, that can be really great, by the way. Like, absolutely, if that's what you want to go for whatever material you want to do. But I also realised that you can also go for, just something either a bit lighthearted or a bit fun. Like, you don't have to always go for the most dramatic, the most intense piece. You can choose kind of whatever you want to do, what you're going to really connect with and what you're going to enjoy. I think we don't need to put that pressure on ourselves.
No, absolutely. But that is really where people kind of tend to get work now, is working in educational spaces, working with communities, working with charities. I know you've got a fantastic charitable partner. We were Dangerous to Know work with charities.
And I really love like everything that you said, kind of this all, the workshops that you're doing and taking this, into these settings with young people, where you've gone with it, for all of that to come from this creative, honest piece of work that you did, and from drawing from personal experiences, and then also putting your creativity into it and creating something new, and how you've managed to make an impact and show the complexity of mental health.
But it's also really exciting because, of course, your work with Helen Parry continues.
Yes!
Which is great. She's back on board for the new iterations of Dear Eliza in educational facilities, which is really
That's
exciting.
quite right. And we're working with a drama therapist named Lauren Hart, and she's going to be helping develop the workshop. And then there's also someone who's coming on board as a facilitator that I'm really not sure about as a person.
I imagine you were scraping the barrel a little.
I can't remember what her name is. No, it's going to be really exciting to be working with Caroline.
Yay! I'm very excited about this. Quite far removed from our previous collaboration with Helen Parry when we were in a garden singing about grasshoppers, which you may have caught at the start of this.
But just as serious and just as weighty a topic.
Just as impactful.
Just
People
as
get turned
impactful.
into grasshoppers more often than you think.
Yes, and there's so many myths around it. So many myths.
We need to do a public service announcement about the grasshopper pandemic. Yeah, we just did a lovely show back in 2 years ago. Someone found an old script that their mother had written at the age of about 9 and surprised her with it with a bunch of actors. Helen Parry kind of corralled us all and we turned up in a garden.
And it was probably one of the best gigs of my life.
It was wonderful. Honestly, the most receptive audience I've ever had.
Yes, I'm quite lucky with my acting career is starting to pick up. I'm self-represented, so there's that kind of uphill battle all the time of representing yourself. But then you get to a point where you feel quite proud of the kind of professional gigs that you've managed to get for yourself and how you're doing. But then really when I look back on it, and I think Grasshopper King's got to be up there.
It's got to be.
As one of the best things I've done.
But it's so freeing. I think one of the nice things about creating work, I'm not one of these that's like, can we just create art for art's sake? Because that's a lovely thought and it'd be nice to be able to do that. But every piece of theatre has a deep and important meaning. But sometimes you've just got to put on silly grasshopper glasses and play a fake accordion, you know.
Well, that's it. There's the spectrum of the arts, isn't it? It's like what you can kind of do with that and what anything, people put themselves out there, can create, weird and wacky and wonderful pieces of work and then
Absolutely.
really heartfelt, hard-hitting
And
pieces.
it can be both. It can be both.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm really excited with lived experiences for, is that we've got pieces that are really whimsical and quite ridiculous. And last year we had some pieces that were, really wacky and bizarre, but at the heart of it gets you thinking.
Backtracking a little bit to say you're sort of self-represented, there's so many people who've been on this podcast so far. I say so many, there's been 2. But most of the people that we've been talking to on the podcast make their own work in order to get out there and do stuff. And, starting a theatre company, starting Red Line Theatre is just a case in point. You know what you've got. You've got a fantastic sort of product. You've got a fantastic way of looking at the world and sort of stream of creativity. And it's so difficult to get opportunities. The best thing to do is just forge your own path.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's why I wrote Dear Eliza in the first place, was I was feeling tired of emailing people and not getting responses, applying for casting calls and not hearing anything back, and that kind of frustration and almost wanting to slam your head against a brick wall because it feels like that's what you're talking to. So that's why I wrote my own work, and it has just blossomed into this thing. And now I'm in the position where I actually quite like being self-represented. I feel like I've got a lot of autonomy over my career, and I feel like as actors you can sometimes be shoehorned, or you can feel like you have no control over the gigs you're applying to.
I think that people are finding more and more that it's easier sometimes to put the work in for yourself and to find the work that you want to do. And especially on the sort of theatre scene, we talk a lot about how collaborative it is, but people tend to find each other work. We can we're not quite our own agents, but we're or each other's agents. But, if I can't do a gig that someone wants me to do, I can always name 3 or 4 other people who can do it.
We've spoken to guests and they've said to us about how many people they've got involved in a project that they've created that we would know every single name on that list, because everyone is very supportive. Everybody jumps at the opportunity to get involved in each other's work. I think that is something that is great about this community. I feel that we met through a project that we both wanted to get involved in, and that's kind of led to us working together and things. And same with our friends, and we know a lot of the same people through the fact that everyone wants to collaborate, and that is great. And I do think that a lot of people do manage to find a lot of work through the people that they've met, through the network. Yeah,
and we're all getting more and more savvy about where to find funding. I mean, obviously that's still a big gap, but that means then that we can once we've got a project underway, we can go, oh, I know who would be great for this because I've seen them in this. So I think being self-represented, especially in Manchester, you can have that freedom for people to reach out and just grab you into a project without you having to then go through an agent, give a cut, all that.
You forge your own identity as well through your work, I guess. As you've mentioned, you can kind of be whatever you want to be, and especially as an artist that is creating like your own
I think for me, the path that I've gone on, I'm not, saying I never want to be represented, because that isn't true, to be honest. You do get better opportunities for work through representation. But having the experience of properly self-representing myself and creating my own work, I now have so much more of a backbone as a performer, which I didn't have before. And that I'm quite a principled person, so a majority, like 90% of commercials, I won't want to do them because the money's good, but I simply don't want to be the face of McDonald's when I'm an environmental vegetarian. Exactly. And one of the issues that I had when I was represented was trying to negotiate that when the agent obviously wants to put you forwards for certain things, and then I felt like I couldn't say no to certain things, and I feel like I've got a lot more autonomy now, and if I were to sign with an agency, I feel like I'd be a lot more capable of saying that I do not want to do this. These are my boundaries. I'm in control of my career, and absolutely your working relationship with an agent should be a working relationship. It should be collaboration, respectful, absolutely. But I think that a lot of the time, if you're an inexperienced actor and you get into that relationship, you actually don't really know how to assert what your professional boundaries are.
You feel like you can't say no, and people I've spoken to early in their careers have expressed that kind of feeling of, but I didn't want to say no to this because I was worried that would prevent me from getting opportunities down the line. And I think that it's very hard. You have to find that ability to, like you say, assert yourself and know what those boundaries are and uphold them, especially if maybe you're a people pleaser.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
There's always people saying to me, actor friends saying, "Oh, got to do this self-tape. I don't really think I'm right for it. I don't really want to do the project, but I got to keep the agent happy," which to me is just bizarre.
Yeah. And to be fair, as a disclaimer, like, I do have a lot of friends with agents who, like, absolutely love them and say, oh my God, since I found my agent, I know the sort of work I'm cut out for.
Absolutely.
And it can be
so
like
having
good.
the right relationship can make a difference.
And I think that's down to both people. And I definitely think that you need to learn as a performer how you want to represent yourself as well as who you want to represent you. And it's not necessarily, down to the agent to bring that out of you. And some agents are really good at that, but sometimes it is just about kind of taking a stand and finding your voice and then working with people. It would be so much easier once you have your own voice.
Yeah, and it's not fair on agents as well if you are accepting opportunities that are not right for you. You're not going to...
And then doing half-hearted self-tapes.
Exactly. So they need to know that you are what you want and what you're cut out for. So yeah, it's definitely a give and take.
Yeah, you kind of have to express that, I think, because, on their end, they can be putting you forward for everything, as far as that's what they want to be doing for you.
Yeah.
But then it's striking that balance between you being able to express, I'm not sure if these kind of projects are for me, and then you're able to kind of navigate that and then that not be an issue.
Yeah.
Is there any projects that you're working on outside of lived experiences that you want to showcase? You want to share? You want to give an exclusive about?
I'm not going to give too much information away. However, Redline Theatre are hoping to do something for Manchester Fringe Festival.
Oh, yes. Okay. Very good.
So you've just got to keep your eyes peeled on the social media for that. And I won't say anymore.
This is probably a good time to ask for the social media handles of Redline Theatre.
So it's at Redline Theatre.
Oh,
crazy. Yeah, so Redline Theatre. And our email address is redlinetheatreco@gmail.com if you want to get in touch. Certainly would love anyone listening who wants to get in touch, just say hi, whatever the reason is for that. And obviously with what we're hoping to do with Dear Eliza, we've got a private performance actually of Dear Eliza on the 23rd of July that we are inviting lecturers from universities to attend, charities to attend, mental health organisations. So if you're listening and you are a mental health professional and want to come and check it out, or you work at a university or a college and you want to come along and watch, it's free entry. Just get in touch with us and we can definitely sort that out for you.
Absolutely. Anyone who wants to find out a bit more about the Dear Eliza project, particularly if they have sort of connections within the educational sphere, please do get in touch, and we will link all of the sort of mentions that we've got in this podcast. We'll link it below. But it does look like we're about to run out of time on the podcast recording for today, which is a shame because we could just keep going and going. I really could keep nabbing on, which is why I started the podcast, because I need an outlet somewhere. But thank you so much, Barbara, for coming on. You've got so many exciting things coming up. I can't wait to work on them and B, see them.
You're absolutely brilliant. It's so amazing to hear about everything that you've got planned and everything you've been working on. I'm sure that our listeners will take a lot from this. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. When are you going to reverse a podcast? You need for April Fool's Day. Oh wait, you've passed that already, haven't you?
We have.
You need to have a reverse, get a guest on to make the podcast about you.
That will be fun.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That's my idea. Free.
I don't need any kind of prompting to make everything about me. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. If you want to send in any listener questions, if you want to get in contact with us for anything, if you want to be on the podcast, then email mitpoddy@gmail.com. That's mitpoddy@gmail.com. You can also follow our Instagram, which is @MIT_pod. We've read emails out. We will read emails out. We will. The time is flexible. Oh God, shut up, Caroline. Anyway, yes, it's been wonderful to have Barbara Diesel on the podcast, and we're so looking forward to coming back again with another guest next week.
Yes,
thanks
amazing.
So much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.